Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 8 of my walk through Revelation in little bite sized chunks. This is Beastie Boys and Babylon Noise. And this week we're talking about the worst mascots ever. So I'd love to know, first of all, if you have been a part of a mascot or a school that had a mascot that you just thought was the worst ever. I went to, or when I was a youth pastor at Columbia, Missouri, and the high school right by our church was called Hickman High School, and they had a mascot that you can see here. It's the Cupid doll, which is this little cute little baby. And there were all kinds of stories about why I think the guy who made them went there or whatever. Anyway, but this was their mascot. It's a little naked baby doll, and as you can imagine, they got all kinds of harassment for this from the teams they played. I thought it was so funny that these were the mascot costumes they made. I'm going to blow this up for you so you can see it here, because man, just horrific, right? And what I love about them is they're not actually babies, right? They're human, like regular human size, human proportion bodies with these little baby heads on them. And the students created this thing they called the Dog Pound Order, the DPO, as their way of cheering and having school pride and all of that. None of it connected to naked babies at all, because of course the naked baby is just a terrible mascot, right? Like, it's not fearsome, it's not inspiring, it doesn't say to other teams, hey, we're going to destroy you, we're going to win, right, we're going to rally. It may have some symbolic value for like the heritage and the history of the school, maybe, but it's not uh it's not particularly inspiring. And I bring that up because I think that sort of tension between the mascot and what it's meant to be is really at the heart of chapter 5 of the book of Revelation. So if you recall, we have been in this book, we have been looking at the letters that were written to these 7 churches in the book of Revelation. They were all in the Roman province of Asia, which is modern day Turkey, Asia Minor. And they were all facing Rome's authoritarian rule and trying to figure out what it means to live faithfully in that. And we saw through the letters, they all had these different ways of trying to navigate that. Um, Last week, though, we began what I called the second vision cycle. If the first was Jesus narrating these letters to John to take dictation, the second is where he moves John up into the heavenly throne room. And so now John is transported into this place. And in chapter 4, we don't really see any plot happening, right? All we see is the sort of getting the setting. And we see John in this very familiar to readers of Hebrew prophecy, familiar throne room scene with God in the middle on the throne and all of these elders around laying down their symbols of authority. Remember the crowns, the diadems, not the Stephanos crowns. And then we see these cherubim, which are these, boundary guardian creatures around the throne. And again, nothing like they're all like worshiping and singing and stuff, but we don't get the sense that they're putting on a performance for John. We get the sense that they're just there doing what they always do. And so now in chapter 5 is where the plot really begins in earnest, because we meet we see that in the hand of the one who is seated on the throne, which is God, is a scroll. And again, this would be common imagery for people of the day, that the king issued edicts that were written down in a scroll. And then the scroll was unsealed. The seal was there to authenticate the fact that this was from the king. The scroll was unsealed, and then the scroll opened and the proclamation read. And it was the announcement of the king's words that really put the law into effect. So this is what we're seeing here, right? Is God is claiming authority over the world and claiming the ability to enact some sort of something, except there's a problem. It says no one was found worthy in heaven or on earth or under the earth to open the scroll. No one could enact God's will on the earth. And again, these churches that were living under Roman rule would have understood this was because Rome was ruling the world. Rome's empire was supreme and sovereign. And they understood this. We're actually going to have to do this more next week. We're going to take like a little excursus here and talk about empire and sin, but they understood this as specifically the consequence of their own sinfulness. So when we say that it was human sin that kept the scroll sealed, like they really understood and meant that, right? God is on the throne. God is holding the scroll. No one is worthy to unseal it, which means no one is capable of defeating Rome, of overthrowing Rome's authority, of conquering the consequences and the weight of human sinfulness. And then someone says, "Don't worry." John starts weeping because of this, right? He's of course devastated because he sees the suffering that's going on in these churches. He knows it in him in his own body because he's in exile, right? And so then someone says, "Don't worry. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is coming, and he can open the scroll and unseal it." And again, this is obvious Jesus imagery, this Lion of Judah. This goes back to the fact that Judah is one of the 12 tribes of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're the ones that the King David is descended from. He was a Judahite, and Jesus, being a part of the lineage of David, is part of the lineage of Judah. And in Genesis chapter 49, Judah's father, Jacob slash Israel, prophesies over Judah that he is a lion, and because of that, he will rule. Again, lions have always been really regal in our imagination. We call him the king of the jungle, things like that, right? So, again, no big surprises here. The big surprise comes though when we look to the lion, because again, we're looking to see this big, powerful lion who finally, this promised king is returning in the mantle of David and Judah and all of these rulers, and he is going to come and be powerful enough to defeat Rome and open the scroll. What we get instead is this terrible mascot, this lamb, and it's not just a lamb. It's your English translations probably read something like a slaughtered lamb, and the Greek is doing some really interesting things there. We'll come back to in a second, but specifically, it's this lamb that's been sacrificed already. And again, wow, what a terrible mascot, right? We're expecting this big, amazing, powerful, conquering, kingly figure, and instead we get not just a lamb, but a sacrificed lamb. Again, it's easy to see the connection to the Jesus imagery, right? That um, that we have Jesus here as the one who is the lion and the lamb. And you actually hear this a good bit, right? That Jesus is the lion and the lamb. We even sing it in some of our praise songs that we sing in church. And what we mean by this is that he does both, right? He's the fearsome warrior type, like the Narnia Aslan type, and he's also the meek and mild, weak, vulnerable, sacrificed one. This is a tension we're going to come back to again and again in Revelation, because it's actually a misreading of what is going on in Revelation, and specifically who Jesus is in Revelation. I found this terrible picture here. I'll blow it up for you. I found this terrible. It's like a painting you can buy that's probably AI generated or whatever, right? Where you have the cross behind the lion, and then a reflection is the lamb. It's like, see, it's both at the same time. But that's not what Revelation 5 says. Uh, um, it's not that this slaughtered lamb is a lion at the same time. Instead, it says this: um, this lamb who is standing as though slaughtered. And then they say, as the lamb takes the scroll and heaven erupts into worship, that you are worthy to take the scroll and break its seals because you were slaughtered. Okay. Not despite the fact that you were slaughtered, or like you were slaughtered, but also in addition to that slaughteredness, you also have the lion stuff that make no. What enables Jesus to take the scroll, to unseal it, and to enact God's judgment in the world, to enact God's rule and authority to overtake Rome, is the very fact of his slaughteredness. It is his slaughtered, vulnerable, weak, sacrificed nature that make him worthy, not his fearsome, conquering, toothsome lion nature. And that's where this language becomes important. This lamb standing as if it had been slaughtered. We don't have a good English verb tense for what the Greek is doing here, but it is a verb tense that indicates that something has always been and continues to be true. And so the best rendering of this I've heard in English is an always slaughtered lamb, as though this is an intrinsic uh, identifier. This is an intrinsic piece of who this lamb is. Jesus is the always slaughtered lamb. So again, it's important to go back to this. He's not the lion and the lamb. He is the one that we look to be a lion, but when he is revealed in truth, is an always slaughtered lamb. Again, a terrible mascot if you're looking for conquest and power, right? It really undermines this idea that God is just going to out Rome, that what we really need is just a bigger bully to beat up the bully here. And that's as we move forward, this is such an important piece of table setting, because as we think about how we resist authoritarianism today, we have to ask these questions, right? What does power look like? And what does victory mean? If we defeat Rome with Rome's tools, doesn't that just make us Rome also? In other words, doesn't the empire just win whether we defeat that empire or whether we become that empire? And what Jesus is offering is an entirely different way to achieve victory. Now, next week, we're going to kind of take a step back, because I think it's really important for us to understand how the ancient readers of this text would have understood the link between sin and empire. We think of sin as so much a personal thing that we really need to dig into this before we move forward in Revelation. So if you were reading this as a book, this would be like one of those boxes that you break out to the side, right? Then after that, we're going to really get the plot moving, because the Lamb, now that he has the scroll, is going to start popping off the seals. And as he does, remember we talked last week about how heaven and earth are connected. As the Lamb pops a seal off in heaven, on earth, all hell is going to begin breaking loose. And so we're going to start looking at the interplay between the seals and what's going on earth. And the very first thing we do with that is the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So yeah, here we go. Things are only going to get crazier from here on out. Thank you as always for watching and engaging. I will be back next week. Until then, thanks for watching these. These are all free to anyone, whether you subscribe or not, but I'd love for you to become a subscriber. And of course, if you'd like to support it, you can become a paying subscriber. Would always love to do that as well. I'm also working in my newsletter on some articles on how we resist fascism, more specifically by exploring what fascism looks like. So it's a good companion piece to this. So you're welcome to have those as well. Got a Superman article coming for you as well. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And until next week, grace and peace be with you.